Dao Nian quietly glanced at Chu Badao, thinking to herself, today's priority is to clean up those idiots. Chu Badao frowned unhappily, thinking, don't overdo it and die in vain. After listening, she nodded, accepting KH letter 185D stroke letter 1EA7 Yu Hon's words. Alright, I'll go with it. KH letter 185D stroke letter 1EA7 Yu Hon immediately turned to D stroke letter 1B0 letter 1EDD Vam and said, BunRv, quickly lead everyone away. The martial arts fanatic D stroke letter 1B0 letter 1EDD Vam paused for a moment. I'll lead if you want, but I have no idea where the path is. Just then, a leader stepped forward, his voice as loud as a broken bell. Let me show you the way. So he led more than 100 still-breathing martial artists and 800 staggering madmen, retreating through the inner fortress's back gate like a horde of fleeing specters. Half an hour later, D-stroke letter 1B0 letter 1EDD Vam returned in a panic to report, BunRv, they've all retreated. Sword King Leth and Thur said in a deep voice, KH letter 185 D-stroke letter 1EA7 Yu Hon, you lead the rest through the secret passage. KH letter 185 D-stroke letter 1EA7 Yu Hon choked on his words. How can I face the young master now? Leth and Thur thundered, go now. Or are you planning to stand here and wait for death? Spit out. KH letter 185 D-stroke letter 1EA7 Yu Hon roared like a madman, punching the steel-hard wall. Fresh blood spurted out, dyeing his hand red. Let's go, let's go. He bellowed. I will engrave today's humiliation deep into my bones. Darian, you wait there and tremble. Having finished speaking, KH letter 185 D-stroke letter 1EA7 Yu Hon led D-stroke letter 1B0 letter 1EDD Vam and a few dozen raiders to open the secret path and retreat. Only Sword King Leth and Thur remained in the fortress. Behind him lay 3,700 bloodline users, sprawled out and convulsing like beached fish. Leth and Thur looked at them, his eyes tangled in confusion. Logically, I should kill you to keep you from falling into enemy hands. He sighed, but my heart won't allow it. After hesitating for a long time, he still couldn't bring himself to strike. Fine, I'll go. Whoever wants to bite can bite. I won't use the secret passage. I'll use the main gate. Thu Din Ng letter 1 ECDC quietly said, please feel free. Leth and Thur glanced at the two grandmasters from Wu State and Chu State. Are you really not going to attack? Leth and Thur asked. Please proceed, came the reply. If they wanted to kill Leth and Thur, they could, but the price would be steep. At least one grandmaster would have to die. If he fought desperately, he would certainly drag one person down to the grave with him. Finally, more than 2,000 hidden Arjun Association martial artists split apart, creating a path like parting waves. Leth and Thur walked leisurely, turning his head to look back before leaving. His eyes were filled with tears, and sorrow rose in his throat. Leth and Thur, swear I will never forget this day. After saying this, he departed filled with indignation. At this point, TH letter 1 EA9M Lang's forces and TR letter 1B0 letter 1 EDD Sin Fortress had completely withdrawn. The three factions divided the spoils, neatly splitting the 3,700 bloodline users. The Hidden Arjun Association took 1,000, while the Crown Prince and Third Prince each received 1,350. A few hours later, news simultaneously arrived at the Champion Marquis's residence, the Hidden Arjun Association headquarters, the Seal Sacrificial Tower, the Crown Prince's residence, and the Third Prince's residence. The journey of over 100 miles left the warhorses panting like bellows, requiring a change of horses every 20 miles. The messenger knelt frantically. The master, a major incident has occurred. All 3,700 bloodline users have been captured. Hearing the news, TH letter 1 EA9M Lang felt as if struck by lightning, standing frozen like a wooden statue. After a moment, he suddenly howled hysterically, Heavens! What in the world did Leth and Thur do? Can he still be called the Sword King? Where is KH letter 185 D stroke letter 1 EA7 Yu Hon? This cultivation is almost at the Grandmaster level. How could 2 experts and 1,000 martial artists be completely lost? Where is my second Nirvana army? Without them, how can I train forces? How can I fight against the Crown Prince and Ning Kai? Is KH letter 185 D stroke letter 1 EA7 Yu Hon so stupid? Why didn't he kill them all? Why did he let them fall into enemy hands? TH letter 1 EA9M Lang was enraged unlike ever before, roaring like a wailing ghost. After a long time, he slowly calmed down. No, KH letter 185 D stroke letter 1 EA7 Yu Hon did the right thing. Even if they fell into enemy hands, I couldn't bring myself to kill them. They are all pitiful people. TH letter 1 EA9M Lang's face was ashen white as he murmured, this time, I truly lost. It's a loss that hurts to the very bone. Someone received the good news that the plan to completely capture the second Nirvana army was a perfect success. He asked in a deep voice, how do you confirm for sure? Are those people real spiritual bloodline users, and not a trap from TH letter 1 EA9M Lang? Thu Din Ng letter 1 ECDC replied, H letter 1 EAFC Shui Pavilion spies have been monitoring this for several months. My people planted in the Heavenly Tao Society also participated fully. When I attacked the scene, TH letter 1 EA9M Lang's side left more than 100 bodies behind. Alchemists checked the bloodlines, and they completely matched those of the spiritual bloodline users. Hearing this, Thu Bardao nodded slightly. Just then, a Hidden Arjun Association warrior rushed in. Master, this is a letter from TH letter 1 EA9M Lang. Thu Bardao waved his hand, signaling him forward. The warrior immediately put on gloves, carefully tore open the envelope, and pulled out the paper inside as if afraid of being haunted. It was indeed letter 1EA9M Lang's handwriting, a few words scribbled like a ghost's claw scratching on paper. Chu Batao, I will definitely take revenge. I will take revenge at all costs. In just a moment, those words gradually disappeared as if they had never existed. Thu Din Ng letter 1E CDC laughed loudly. Letter 1EA9M Lang must be so angry he wants to explode. Just then, booming explosions sounded from outside like thunder. Thu Din Ng letter 1E CDC murmured as he stepped out the door. Father, the great wave is about to arrive. Thu Bar Dao shivered slightly. The tide has finally come. This year it arrived nearly 2 hours late, by which time the sky was already leaning towards sunset. Watching the tidal bore as the sun sets is even more mesmerizing. Thu Bar Dao chuckled softly. What perfect timing. The news of victory arrived just as the tide rolled in. Perhaps even heaven and earth are taking this opportunity to celebrate. Once a year, the spectacular sight of the great tidal bore reappears. People packed the riverbanks like sardines, to the point where the city guards had to deploy troops to maintain order. Since the tide was tamed, the sight became a wonder of the capital, with countless people traveling far and wide to witness it. Letter 1EC3 Yubang had constantly asked to see it because the water in letter 1ED9 Jang was fierce year-round, making it a dull sight. This year, there were significantly fewer people. Only tens of thousands waited where the two rivers meet. The spring thunder campaign had everyone on edge, many afraid to go outside. The sight of the two tides converging still made people intensely regret missing it. There was social stratification. Some crowded the riverbank, craning their necks to look, while others stood atop the letter 1EA5NT letter 1EBF tower, observing leisurely. From high up, they viewed the masses below like ants. The tens of thousands below could only look up without clearly seeing anyone on high. They only caught glimpses of people in magnificent robes, beautiful women gracefully moving about like butterflies. Fine wine and precious delicacies were displayed everywhere. Many below watched, salivating, wishing they could also ascend to the highest floor to watch the tide in style. But dreams remained just dreams. In the entire capital, only about 30 people were selected each time invitations were issued. They had to be both powerful aristocrats and close to the hidden source society. Recently, the king had been tense with them. Therefore, current officials, even if invited, did not dare to show their faces, but their wives were carefree. More than 30 invitations were issued, yet over 100 people came, including 20 retired high-ranking ministers. The rest were mostly families of powerful figures who supported the crown prince's faction. Before this, the king had discreetly warned them not to succumb to luxury, meaning not to go see the tide. They treated his warning as if it were wind passing by their ears. Yet over 100 people still appeared. Retired officials were no longer afraid of dismissal, and if they didn't go, they feared severing connections. As for the wives, the king also found it hard to blame them. The Hidden Source Society truly was formidable, having built a tower over 100 meters high that was sturdier than the imperial palace. Over the past few decades, earthquakes had caused the palace to collapse twice, yet the letter 1EA5NT letter 1EBF tower still stood strong. It was rumored that the foundation contained 9 iron pillars as thick as thighs, a moving against cutting, burning, or soaring. Their millennium-old legacy was firm as a rock. The 100 or so powerful figures standing atop the tower looked down at the capital, where everything appeared as tiny as toys. The feeling of standing at such heights made everyone feel lightheaded, as if they had drunk strong wine. At this moment, the sun was low in the west, and the sunset light poured onto the letter 1EA5NT letter 1EBF tower, casting a warm golden hue. The river's surface glittered like gold dust, and the entire tower was wrapped in a brilliant golden glow. Standing high up and watching the scene made them feel as if they had entered a fairyland. Just then, someone shouted, "The tide is here, the tide is here." The tide really was late this year. Everyone stood up simultaneously, and sure enough, the tidal bore appeared. At first, it was just gentle ripples, like a cat wiping its tail. Then it quickly surged higher and higher, swirling like 10,000 galloping horses, thundering towards them as if wanting to swallow the entire bank. The two tidal streams from two sides rushed into each other, surging like two fierce beasts, and then suddenly collided. An earth-shattering explosion occurred. Water splashed up over 20 tr lead 1B0 lead 1E3 NG high, completely covering the river surface in white spray. Immediately, tens of thousands of people along the riverbank cheered like thunder. Meanwhile, atop the letter 1EA5NT letter 1EBF tower, the aristocrats merely curled their lips. In their eyes, the crowd below was as noisy as a swarm of ants. What was so surprising about the beginning of the tide? Once it surged, each subsequent wave was stronger than the last, rising in layers, creating a magnificent sight that made people's hearts surge with excitement. But right at the climax, the tidal bore suddenly disappeared. Several giant whirlpools appeared on the river surface, spinning rapidly like devil's mouths. Thu Din NG letter 1ECDC spoke up to calm everyone down. "Please remain calm. We just opened the underground river gates to check the water diversion system. The tidal bore will be even stronger. If we don't control it, it could easily overflow the banks and cause disaster." Everyone's eyes widened in admiration. The Hidden Source Society truly was remarkable. They even held the tidal bore in their hands. The two streams of water, as fierce as dragons, were tamed obediently. 15 minutes later, someone ran over to report, Master, the underground river system is now clear. All tidal flow has been diverted to other branches. The inspection is complete. Now is the time to truly watch. The sun was gradually setting, leaving only about half a watch an hour of the last light, just enough time to enjoy the magnificent spectacle. Close the underground river gates. The formal tidal bore viewing ceremony officially begins. Immediately, cheers echoed throughout the place. But at the same time, Thudin and Giletawani CDC secretly gave orders, go check the entire underground river system. Do not miss any spot. Understood. Immediately, several hundred warriors went down into the underground secret passage system to inspect the large gates beneath the Letter 1A5NT Letter 1EBF tower. This was originally an annual procedure, so Thudin and Giletawani CDC wasn't worried. To exploit the open gates and sneak in, one would have to be a top-tier expert to endure the terrifying water flow. An ordinary martial artist who entered would be swept away immediately. Even with the intention of sabotage, that wouldn't be easy, because the foundation of the Letter 1EA5NT Letter 1EBF tower had 9 enormous iron pillars as thick as thighs. It would take a grandmaster wielding an axe and chopping continuously for half a watch an hour just to take down one pillar, not to mention that axes would break easily, no matter how strong their internal energy. Faced with these pillars, one could only sigh in frustration. Following the underground stream overflowing the culvert, the tide rose again, this time far more aggressive. The waves rolled like mad, initially just one wave after another, but instantly transforming into a scene of 10,000 horses galloping. The water surface roared, black columns of waves crashed into each other, spraying white foam. The water was thrown higher and higher, 20 meters, then 30 meters, as if trying to pierce the blue sky. The magnificent sight captivated the crowd on the seal offering tower, leaving them stunned and forgetful of blinking. Some lamented that a person would waste their life if they never stood atop this tower to witness such a tide. While engrossed in watching, they couldn't stop exclaiming, "Fantastic! What a sight! Truly soul-stirring!" In a nearby tower, a different building, the atmosphere was somber, not lively like the seal offering tower. In the living room of the Zhu family, An Wuji was calmly playing chess with Shu Badao. The two had not gone to the seal offering tower because Shu Badao had long since tired of this spectacle. Furthermore, due to his old age and frail nerves, the sound of the weights, which others viewed as a marvel, was merely a headache-inducing noise to him. Thus, every time the tide rose, he avoided it. Setting down a chess piece, he said softly, "I'm old and can't stand this kind of excitement." An Wuji chuckled, "Lord Sure, honestly, you and Shenlang truly have a hatred as deep as the sea. 20 years ago, you allied with the Zai family to harm the Earl Jinwu, almost wiping out the Jin family. Last time, you leaked secret information to Sunan, which caused Su Jianding to lead Western region experts in attacking the Xuanwu Earl's residence, severely injuring Su Beibei. This time is even more horrific. You directly seized Shenlang's 3,000 spiritual bloodline bearers, which is equivalent to cutting off his lifeline." Chu Badao frowned at Yan Wuji's loaded words, saying, "Mr. Dao, just speak frankly." Yan Wuji narrowed his eyes. "I was just thinking that given Shenlang's vindictive nature, he will definitely retaliate wildly. Are you truly sure you haven't left any loopholes? For example, a secret gold vault somewhere?" Chu Badao chuckled softly, and Yan Wuji immediately understood. "So it was a trap. You deliberately revealed the gold vault to make Shenlang lose his mind from anger and work right into it." Chu Badao did not reply. Internally, he felt secretly smug. The gold vault was real, but most of it had been moved long ago. The remainder had been melted down and fused tightly to the floor. Anyone trying to retrieve it would only be left to weep. An Wuji spoke again. "I heard Shenlang's people are on their way to rob that vault. What do you predict will happen in a moment?" Chu Badao looked towards the horizon where the tide roared, slowly saying, "There will probably be a sky-high blaze. We can watch it perfectly from here." Dan Wuji laughed. "Excellent then. I'll just sit here, drink tea, and play chess, waiting to watch the show." Watching Shenlang's subordinates throw themselves into the fire. Having lost 2 consecutive rounds today, he must be so furious his head is about to explode. As soon as he finished speaking, a world-shaking explosion echoed from afar. The sound, like thunder tearing through the sky, immediately drew everyone's attention. Chu Badao paused for a moment, then the corner of his mouth curved into a scheming smile. He was certain the explosion came from the trap set at the vault. Everything was unfolding exactly as planned. His eyes flashed with delight. When people get angry, reason disappears first, and Shenlang was clearly no exception. At the same time, at the Hidden Argent Society's secret vault, the scene had descended into chaos. Billows of black smoke rose as flames consumed nearly half the area. People nearby scattered, not understanding what was happening. Suddenly, several figures struggled to crawl out of the sea of fire. Their clothes were scorched, and their faces were blackened. As they ran, they coughed violently, unable to stand steadily. The crowd recognized them all as people from the Champing Marquis' residence. Whispers spread everywhere. Shenlang is really finished this time. Judging by this, quite a few people must have died. Tomorrow, this news will spread throughout the capital. Their eyes showed both curiosity and pity. But the person being discussed, Shenlang, was currently standing inside the Champing Marquis' residence with a completely different demeanor. He stood silently in the courtyard, his gaze profound. According to external reports, his elite squad had fallen into the trap and suffered heavy losses. A faint smile appeared on his lips, the smile of someone who had achieved their objective. He calculated internally that if a major incident occurred elsewhere, it had nothing to do with him. He and his subordinates had clear alibis. It was only tough for Q2 Huan's group, who were currently feigning death in the rubble. Returning to Shu Badao, A hidden Argent Society warrior hurried over with urgent news right at this moment. The news stated clearly that Chen Lang's elite squad had attacked the vault and suffered heavy losses. Upon hearing this, Chu Badao simply nodded slightly. Continuing to calmly play chess with Yan Wuji, he slowly stood up and brushed off his sleeves, saying nonchalantly, "Let's call this game a draw." Looking at the sky, "It's getting late. I'll take my leave." Just then, a subordinate stepped forward and asked, "The young master wants to know how much longer the tide watching ceremony will last." Atop the seal offering tower, Chu Dingyu raised his hand to signal. His voice echoed amidst the roaring waves. "There's only time left for one stick of incense for watching. I hope everyone enjoys the final waves." As soon as he finished speaking, a huge wave surged violently, crashing against the tower walls. Water splashed everywhere, and the crowd immediately cheered. It was a rare and unforgettable sight. Some people looked down at the commoners below, who were immersing themselves to watch. Someone on the tower sneered, "Watching the tide properly requires standing high up. If a few people from that crowd below were swept away, that would be even more amusing." Standing behind them, Chu Dingyu paid no attention to the chatter, merely waving his hand coldly. "Beat the drums." Immediately, rapid drumming sounded. Chu Dingyu turned to the officials and bowed slightly. "I hope everyone was entertained today." The officials laughed loudly in response. Chu Dingyu felt the peak of satisfaction at this moment. He had won 2 rounds against Chen Lang, and even today's tide seemed to have arrived just in time to congratulate him. In his eyes, anyone who dared to oppose the hidden Argent Society was simply seeking death. Chen Lang was no different. Who was he anyway? This was only the beginning. The hidden Argent Society would crush him. Chu Dingyu's eyes turned icy cold. In his imagination, Chen Lang was being submerged by the floodwaters. Gritting his teeth, he wondered if Chen Lang could hear this drumming and roaring tide, because it was the song to see him off. But at his most self-satisfied moment, the sudden boom echoed. The entire hidden Argent Tower shook violently. The shock was so strong that it drowned out the sound of the waves. The smiles on everyone's faces froze, and the cheers turned into panic. Even Thur Din and Gok turned pale and jumped, bewildered as to what the dreadful sound was. Was it an earthquake? But in just a moment, the people below realized the truth was far more terrifying. It wasn't the ground shaking. It was the hidden temple tower itself swaying violently, the entire building rocking crazily as if it were about to collapse at any moment. Immediately after, a dazzling light erupted from the base of the tower. With a roar, the explosion tore through the foundation, red flames spewing out like a newly awakened beast. In an instant, screams echoed everywhere. But in a few minutes, several hundred hidden Argent Society martial artists filed into the secret waterway beneath the hidden temple tower. The sewer was approximately 3 to 4 meters wide and 2 meters high, allowing people to work shoulder to shoulder. There were a few ventilation holes, so it wasn't suffocating, but the smell was truly a specialty of hell, a mixture of fishy, putrid, and musty odors that made everyone grimace upon entering. Water dripped from above, and all kinds of trash floated underfoot. There was no other way around it. When the underground river culvert opened, debris would inevitably wash in with the water. One martial artist covered his nose and wailed, "What a foul stench. It's enough to make you faint." Others looked at the pile of garbage and sighed, "How are we supposed to deal with all this junk?" The person next to him shrugged and said, "Forget it. Open the sluice a few more times over the next few days, and the water will wash it all away." The captain waved his hand. "Ignore the trivial stuff. Go inspect the large steel columns. Don't worry about anything else." Several hundred martial artists immediately split into groups, heading deep into the waterway to inspect the 9 massive steel columns supporting the entire hidden temple tower. These were the building's backbone and the foundation of the hidden Argent Society headquarters. If even one column had an issue, the consequences would be unimaginable, so absolute precision was required. But as they went further, they noticed something strange. The air suddenly grew much hotter. It was early spring, and it should have been cold, but inside the sewer, it was hot as if someone had lit a fire below. The martial artist wiped sweat from his brow and muttered, "Why did it suddenly get so hot?" Very quickly, they reached the location of the massive steel columns. As soon as they saw the scene before them, everyone froze as if their pressure points had been struck. The columns, as thick as a thyre, were burning fiercely, with sparks flying from the steel surface, glowing red like metal in a forge. The entire column glowed red, even beginning to corrode, almost on the verge of snapping off. The martial artist escaped. What kind of devilry is this? Steel can burn. No one understood what was happening, but the answer was simple. It was thermite, a horrifying mixture that generates heat up to 2,500 degrees, melting steel like cutting butter. The air in the sewer grew hotter and hotter, so hot that breathing became difficult. The group immediately turned around and ran as if chased by ghosts. And then the inevitable happened. In a wooden barrel placed in the middle of the passage, a piece of white phosphorus, unable to withstand the heat, played up. It spontaneously ignited, bursting into flames. The wooden barrel was immediately burned open, and the fish oil inside spilled out. In just an instant, with continuous bursts, hundreds, perhaps even over 1,000, wooden barrels along the waterway exploded. Tens of thousands of kilograms of fish oil gushed out like a flood. A single spark was all it would take to turn it into hell. At that moment, fire ignited the oil. The roars were continuous. Flames rose like giant monsters. The sealed space of the sewer, unable to release energy, concentrated it into an earth-shattering explosion. That moment was nothing less than the apocalypse descending. A heaven-shaking, earth-breaking roar rang out. After the shockwave, the hidden Argent Society headquarters, the hidden temple tower, suddenly collapsed. Amidst the chaos and screams echoing everywhere, a figure suddenly leapt from the collapsing building. It was Swandong. When the building shook violently, he reacted incredibly fast, springing from the railing, diving into the air, and grabbing hold of a large branch protruding from the cliff face. The branch shook violently as Swandong hung suspended, with a swirling sea of fire beneath his feet. He panted heavily, his eyes still wide with panic. His heart was violently shaken. He had absolutely not anticipated things being this horrific. The hidden Argent Tower, which had stood majestically for so many years, turned to rubble in the blink of an eye. His mind was in utter turmoil. What exactly did young Master Shen do? Huandong was both shocked and amused, muttering to himself, does he no longer consider me a friend? He clearly told me earlier to come and witness a great event, yet he didn't give me any warning at all. If he had been a moment slower just now, he might have been buried alive under the rubble. The thought made Huandong shiver. He looked down at the roaring fire below, red flames coiling up like fire dragons, black smoke covering the sky. But what truly puzzled him was something else. His eyes fixed on the destroyed foundation of the tower, his mind full of questions. What exactly did Chen Lang do? How could he break the massive iron columns supporting the entire tower? The more he thought about it, the more unbelievable it seemed. Even Lai Tangku, the martial arts master renowned throughout the world, couldn't necessarily destroy them by swinging an axe for half an hour. And what kind of terrifying axe would that even be? Huandong hung from the branch, watching the tower burn fiercely, a chill running down his spine. When did Chen Lang prepare all this? Thu Bar Dao finished a game of chess and leisurely worked out the door, intending to take a stroll over to Anti Letter 1 EBFL Letter 1 EA7U. The two locations were only separated by a main road, a short walk away, so he wasn't in a hurry. However, as soon as he looked up, he witnessed a scene that made his entire body freeze as if hit by a pressure point strike. The ground suddenly bulged as if a giant earth dragon was writhing beneath, followed by an earth-shattering explosion. The magnificent tower immediately collapsed. The headquarters of the Hidden Source Society, which had been luxurious and imposing for 100 years without decline, turned into a pile of rubble in the blink of an eye. The catastrophe didn't stop there. Immediately after the collapse, a huge wave like a tidal surge swept over and cleared everything away. When the dust and water settled, the area became an empty lot. Thu Bar Dao stood frozen, his mind seemingly ceasing to function. He didn't feel pain at the sight because the scene was so absurd. He felt like he was watching something happening to someone else far away. His whole body trembled as if he had seen a ghost in broad daylight. It took a long time for Thu Bar Dao to gradually regain his senses, feeling reality return little by little. He trembled and muttered, That is my Hidden Source Society headquarters, the NT Letter 1 EBFL Letter 1 EA7U, which stood for 100 years without falling, and now, before finishing his sentence, his throat choked up, and his breathing became difficult. Thu Bar Dao clutched his chest, eyes wide open, and then thumped as he collapsed to the ground. At that moment, Ngonbo K Letter 1 EF5, who was standing like a statue, rushed over to support him, calling out in panic, Thu Kong. Thu Bar Dao abruptly opened his eyes wide and roared with resentment, the TH Letter 1 EA9M Lang fellow, you and I cannot coexist under the same sky. As soon as he finished speaking, with a sputtering sound, a mouthful of fresh blood gushed from his mouth. Then his eyes rolled back, and he lost consciousness completely. In stark contrast to their panic, TH Letter 1 EA9M Lang was completely unaware of the case outside. The lead bang NHI, TR Letter 1 EAFC TH Letter 1 ECB, BOLI Letter 1 EC7T, Pound Now, and several others to the highest point of the TR Letter 1 B0 Letter 1 EDDNG bin Marquis's manor early on to watch the show. Pierre was gleeful inside, feeling that his revenge against the Hidden Source Society had finally succeeded perfectly. The more he thought about it, the more thrilled he became. TH Letter 1 EA9M Lang's face clearly showed his delight. I'm happy, so I'll enjoy it. Whatever you all want is up to you. The feeling was like having cold water poured over his head in midwinter, so refreshing and satisfying. He suddenly understood why aliens and movies always destroy the White House or Eiffel Tower first. It turns out that smashing someone else's symbol of power truly brings an uncontrollable grin. Seeing everyone stare at him, TH Letter 1 EA9M Lang lightly coughed and put on a serious face. Why are you looking at me? I didn't do it, okay? This has nothing to do with me. But he had to admit, there were people even happier than him, the crowd of citizens watching the tide from the riverbank. They had long both admired and envied Anti Letter 1 EBFL Letter 1 EA7U, thinking, why do we have to stand below and look up, while you stand high above, looking down on people like ants? They never expected to witness such a spectacular drama today. My goodness, this is too much. Did Anti Letter 1 EBFL Letter 1 EA7U really collapse? 100 years without falling, and now it just collapses. Am I dreaming? At first, not a few people thought they were hallucinating, but soon they realized this wasn't an illusion, as chaotic cries erupted around them. The shocking spectacle was 100 times more stimulating than the tide. A truly earth-shattering event. The 100-year-old solid headquarters of the Hidden Source Society had genuinely collapsed. Among all present, State Ruler Ninangayan HI Letter 1 EBFN was the most severely shocked. He didn't know what would happen, but he had been watching Anti Letter 1 EBFL Letter 1 EA7U with immense frustration. He had previously warned officials not to go watch, but while the officials themselves didn't go, their families did. Retired officials also flocked there. This kind of legal loophole irritated him greatly. Are my words treated as a fleeting breeze? To be honest, the scene wasn't new to him. It wasn't rare for imperial edicts to lose their effectiveness once they left the palace. Even Chu and Gai and Tuing had encountered such a situation. Back then, he decreed that only women, the elderly, and the sick could ride in palanquins, and officials from the third rank up could use them. Everyone else had to ride horses. Violations were countless. He was so angry he personally went to make arrests. So now, even though Nin and Gai and Hi led 1EBFN was annoyed, he only sighed. Should I punish the women or the elderly officials? They were old. How many years do they have left to live? So he just stood far away, annoyed while looking at Anti letter 1EBFL letter 1EA7U. At that moment, rumble, the building suddenly collapsed. He stood stock still. In that instant, he felt a wave of coldness run from his feet straight up to his head, a chilling sensation. People seeking revenge usually just rob treasuries or kill a few hundred people at most, but completely leveling the Hidden Source Society headquarters in BI letter 1EC7TQU letter 1ED1C was something he hadn't dared to imagine. The critical question was, how did TH letter 1EA9M Lang do it? It was insane, too shocking. But immediately after, his head throbbed severely. I can't cover for you on something this big. Every time TH letter 1EA9M Lang caused trouble, it was earth-shattering. There was only terror left in his heart, not a trace of joy, because news of this reaching Bamkin would surely provoke rage. Even state ruler Nin and Gai and Hi letter 1EBFN couldn't guarantee he could bear the consequences. The Crown Prince and Third Prince looked at the scene, and a single thought almost simultaneously appeared in their minds. TH letter 1EA9M Lang really is an absolute lunatic. Not the kind of crazy for fun, but crazy to the bone. To take revenge to this level, causing such earth-shattering destruction. Doubt rose in their hearts. Hard to believe. Did he really do it? Anti letter 1EBFL letter 1EA7U was supported by 9 iron pillars as thick as thighs, so solid that just looking at them was disheartening. It should be almost impossible to break them. So how did he do it? Or was it really not him? The collapse of Anti letter 1EBFL letter 1EA7U immediately sent shockwaves everywhere. The capital, which was already rippling like a lake, was now like a huge rock had been thrown into it, overwhelming all other ripples. Initially, the whole city was silent, then news spread everywhere. From tea houses and taverns to markets and official residences, everyone was talking. Not just the capital, but the entire country was stirred up. Strangely, no one mentioned TH letter 1EA9M Lang. They rumored that the Hidden Source Society had once offended the Dragon King, leading to revenge, with the enraged Dragon King toppling Anti letter 1EBFL letter 1EA7U. There were even more fantastical versions. People recounted that there was an ancient seal under Anti letter 1EBFL letter 1EA7U, which suppressed 2 river gods, so only mild tides occurred. But over time, the seal weakened, the 2 river gods escaped, and in their rage, they overturned the ground and destroyed the tower. No commoner thought TH letter 1EA9M Lang was involved because they had seen with their own eyes. TH letter 1EA9M Lang's people didn't go anywhere near Anti letter 1EBFL letter 1EA7U. He wasn't some immortal being who could stand far away and collapse a 100-meter tall building. Clearly, there was an earth dragon writhing or a river god in a rage. However, the upper class thought differently. When the building collapsed, dozens of nobles were injured or killed, and hundreds of Hidden Source Society members were casualties. Their first reaction was that it must have been TH letter 1EA9M Lang. The fact that 700 bloodline users were stolen from him must have provoked such fierce revenge. But this speculation was quickly refuted because TH letter 1EA9M Lang wasn't present then. He was raging inside the TR letter 1B0 letter 1EDDNG bin Marquis's manor. Furthermore, Sword King Leth and Thur and KH letter 1ED5D stroke letter 1EA7U home led people to attack the Hidden Source Society's secret gold treasury, causing heavy casualties. There was clear evidence, so the blame for Anti letter 1EBFL letter 1EA7U's collapse couldn't be pinned on him. In another Hidden Source Society base, Thu Bardao lay recuperating from injuries. Beside him were Thu Din Ng letter 1ECDC and several experts, including a Grandmaster. Thu Bardao asked cautiously, what did the investigation find? Thu Din Ng letter 1ECDC replied, when the sluice gate to the underground river was open, hundreds of barrels of fish oil flowed in with the water. The complex drainage system diverted most of the water, but many oil barrels got stuck. Tens of thousands of pounds exploded, blowing up the ground. Thu Bardao frowned. That's still not enough to collapse Anti letter 1EBFL letter 1EA7U. That wouldn't break the 9 iron pillars. Thu Din Ng letter 1ECDC said with a trembling voice. Those 9 iron pillars have been cut. Cut? How? Thu Bardao sprang up in alarm. What on earth can cut such thick iron pillars? Thu Din Ng letter 1ECDC shook his head. We haven't found out. Thu Bardao shivered, his whole body shaking. This is too terrifying. It's as if an invisible person acted, cutting off the iron pillars without anyone knowing. All alchemists are stumped. They can't find any traces. Thu Din Ng letter 1ECDC slowly said, Father, this time to destroy Anti letter 1EBFL letter 1EA7U, TH letter 1EA9M Lang perhaps used fewer people than we imagined. Hearing this, Thu Bardao felt a tightness in his chest, almost spitting blood. He closed his eyes and thought, that little beast has too many tricks, and no bottom line. This time, he's hurt the Hidden Source Society to the bone. Thu Din Ng letter 1ECDC asked, what do we do next? Do we accuse th letter 1ea9 Lang? Thu Bar Dao replied coldly, how can we accuse him? Do we have evidence? Will the state ruler help us? If we, sir, it's tantamount to admitting weakness. Thu Din Ng letter 1 ECDC asked, so how do we make a public announcement? Thu Bar Dao closed his eyes, his face full of pain. We calculated silently. The collapse of the 100-year-old ANT letter 1 EBFL letter 1 EA7U is a huge loss, but the most terrifying thing is the prestige. Building it up is hard, but destroying it takes only one night. After a long while, he opened his eyes and said, publicly, we will announce that the iron pillars had issues and were hit by the tide and earthquake, causing the building to collapse. The injured and dead will receive heavy compensation, and those who abandon their posts will be severely punished. As for me, I will go to Vamkin to apologize, leaving the matter for them to handle. We laughed coldly. Gairan Hi letter 1 EBFN can withstand pressure from us, but not from Bamkin. He then issued a further command, announced that the Hidden Source Society in BI letter 1 EC7 TQU letter 1 ED1C is experiencing a financial crisis. Demand all parties pay their debts on time to help the society overcome this challenge. Thur Dinengok felt a chill down his spine upon hearing this, thinking to himself, oh my god, aren't they putting pressure on the National Lord about the debt? Thur Bar Dao continued, the urgent task now is to transform 1,000 users with altered bloodlines into a main force army. If successful, we can salvage some of the losses. Not long after, the Hidden Argent Society officially issued a statement. It claimed that due to someone neglecting their duties, the pillars of the sacrificial tower were eroded, and combined with the high tide, the tower collapsed. Thur Bar Dao and Thur Dinengok vowed to take responsibility on behalf of the society, while also paying enormous compensation to the dead and injured. They organized a large-scale funeral, which National Lord Nin Nguyen Hien personally attended, both offering reproof and comfort. Not long after, Thur Bar Dao sent his resignation letter to the Vamkin headquarters. The capital became nearly quiet, with everyone sensing an impending storm. As expected, he later went to the palace to demand debt repayment from the National Lord. The Hidden Argent Society immediately released a shocking announcement. National Lord Nin Nguyen Hien had borrowed money for 23 years and, after subtracting payments, still owed 12.6 million gold coins. This news stunned the world, leaving everyone speechless and wondering how so much money could have been spent. Even Tham Lang felt his scalp tingle upon hearing this. He knew the National Lord was heavily indebted, but he hadn't expected the amount to be so staggering. For 20 years, borrowing new to repay old, with interest compounding on interest, resulted in this terrifying sum. Pongdan had initially intended to ask the Heavenly Tao Society to acquire this debt, but now, upon seeing the figure, he broke out in a cold sweat. Even they didn't dare take it on. Tham Lang also let go, as he had almost cut off all income from the capital, and his reputation for swindling money had spread far. He sighed, calling the National Lord a true prodigal son. Pongdan gave him a meaningful glance. Tham Lang was startled and quietly asked how much he owed, as he had only spent money in recent years without keeping track. Pongdan smiled gently and said, why mention money between brothers? Tham Lang shook his head and insisted, no, that's wrong. The closer we are, the clearer the accounts should be. Pongdan still smiled and waved his hand. Just forget about it. Talking about money hurts feelings. Hearing this, Tham Lang casually asked, are you really letting it go? Then I'll consider it erased. Pongdan immediately replied concisely, 3,150,000. He broke out in a cold sweat calculating in his head. This guy truly had unparalleled cheekiness. As long as the other person said to forget it, he dared to act as if he never owed anything. Tham Lang froze on the spot, with only one thought in his head. How could I have spent so much? In less than 2 years, he had burned through over 3 million gold coins. He wondered how he spent it so quickly. He compared himself to the National Lord. The National Lord only owed over 10 million after 20 years, while he owed 3 million in just over a year. He clearly outdid the National Lord as a prodigal son. He sighed, admitting defeat. In reality, Pongdan was only joking. The Heavenly Tao Society didn't need him to repay quickly. They just hoped he would spend less, because the benefits he generated already exceeded 2 million gold. While no one worried about Tham Lang's debts, National Lord Nin Nguyen Hien was getting a headache. Tham Lang had leveled the Hidden Argent Society headquarters, and as a result, the other side had turned to pressure the National Lord. It sounded unreasonable but made sense, because everyone knew the National Lord was Tham Lang's biggest backer. Without his support, Tham Lang would never have dared to cause such chaos. If it were only the Hidden Argent Society in Biak Kingdom applying pressure, it would have been manageable, but the Vamkin headquarters also joined in, bringing pressure from the Empire. The Emperor sent envoys to inquire, feigning concern and asking if mediation was needed, but in reality, applying pressure. Pressure from Vamkin, from the Hidden Argent Society headquarters, and from the Emperor weighed on Nin Nguyen Hien like a mountain. However, he couldn't blame Tham Lang, as the Hidden Argent Society had acted first. Furthermore, Tham Lang could be seen as having taken revenge on his behalf, though perhaps a little too forcefully. Latrankan Khan reported that the Hidden Argent Society offered 2 options. Option 1 was to pay an immediate debt installment of 400,000 gold coins. In fact, the National Lord had money because Tham Lang had previously earned him 5 million gold, but this sum was reserved for the war against Kang Kingdom and 2 decisive battles, so it could not be touched. Option 2 was to capture Tham Lang. Although they didn't state it explicitly, everyone understood that the leveling of the headquarters could not be overlooked. The choice was very clear, either pay the money or hand over the person. This was truly a significant matter. Destroying the headquarters felt satisfying, but it was tantamount to slapping Beankin in the face. Everyone knew the Empire was behind the hidden Arjun society, so this time, even Nguyen felt he couldn't bear the pressure. The pressure from Beankin grew stronger, and the envoys sent became increasingly high-ranking. The most recent one was even a prince. Although not explicitly stated, there were only two options left: pay the money or capture Tham Lang. His crimes could be fabricated whenever necessary. After long deliberation, the National Lord said the only remaining option was to seek help from the Prime Minister, asking the Zhu family to lobby in Beankin so the Emperor wouldn't interfere. To protect Tham Lang, National Lord Nguyen humbled himself again, personally visiting the Zhu family head's mansion hoping for assistance from the Zhu family. He hoped the Prime Minister would intervene, but unexpectedly, the Zhu family head was critically ill and in a coma. He returned empty-handed. From that moment on, a rift appeared in their relationship that would be hard to repair. Leaving the Zhu family clan, Nguyen didn't rush back to the palace. He made an abrupt turn and went straight to Ninjan's Marquis of Changping estate, without giving advance notice or observing etiquette. He didn't even bother to maintain his kingly decorum, slamming the door open and barging into Shen Lang's study. As soon as he entered, he let out a long sigh. "Shen Lang, you're finished. From now on, I have lost my Prime Minister. From now on, I'm truly a solitary figure, hugging a pillow alone to keep warm." He looked at Shen Lang with a mix of sadness and helplessness. This time he went too far. Not only did you cause a catastrophe in our country, but you also startled Yanjing over there. I hear even the Emperor was slightly rattled by you. Forget it, I won't blame you. As he spoke, he realized Shen Lang had been writing with his head down the entire time, treating the conversation like background noise. Nguyen was stunned for a moment, then couldn't help but ask, "Page, what are you writing?" Shen Lang leisurely raised his head and said nonchalantly, "Thur, a resignation letter. I plan to give up all my positions, leave the capital, and go home to retire." Nguyen froze in place, his face looking as if he'd just been struck by lightning. "What? Resign and go home?" He immediately jumped up and slammed the table, snatching the letter from Shen Lang's hand. "No. Absolutely not allowed to resign. This is a matter of state. No one in this land can protect you, but even the Emperor of Daryan cannot arbitrarily interfere." The statement had merit. Although Daryan was a co-ruler of the world and employed various methods to control its vassals, each country still decided its own internal affairs and foreign policy. Nguyen became increasingly agitated as he spoke. "If I can't even keep you, what's the point of living? I simply won't hand you over. What can anyone do? Amos, it will anger Daryan and the Hidden Arjun Association, but sending troops to attack isn't guaranteed." Meanwhile, Shen Lang remained silent, simply continuing to write his resignation letter with his head bowed, as if practicing calligraphy. Seeing this, Nguyen sighed and spoke in a slower tone. "Shen Lang, I know that I have done many disappointing things in the past. 21 years ago, after Emperor Jianglai was overthrown, I had to beg Zhu Hiranju to protect my throne. I even abandoned my beloved first wife, causing her to die of frustration, and sent Ninhan away to the Sky Sea Pavilion. I was weak then. I compromised. The Zaz darkened. The Crown Prince and Ninhan still look down on me to this day. That is the greatest internal demon of my life. In the past, I passionately wanted to fight alongside Jianglai, and nearly ended up being buried with him. Ultimately, I couldn't bear the pressure from Daryan and had to bow my head. From then on, Du Hianju became Prime Minister. This humiliation was difficult for him to overcome in his lifetime, unless he could one day stand up in that very position. If one has been forced to bend their back, in the eyes of the world, the back is hard to straighten again. Therefore, in the years that followed, he greatly valued dignity. Fortunately, Du Hiranju was sensible. After stabilizing the situation, he became humble, neither competing for credit nor seizing power, deferring all glory. The relationship between the two was like father and son. However, precisely because he had endured humiliation, Nguyen became vain and sensitive. He knew that the scar of humiliation could not be raised. He looked at Shen Lang earnestly. "Believe me, this time I will fight to the very end. The Hidden Arjun Association shouldn't dream of forcing me to bow down." Upon hearing this, Shen Lang shook his head. "Your Majesty is still too kind-hearted, not cunning enough, and not ruthless enough. So what if you abandoned your first wife 20 years ago and bowed down to the Zhu clan? Why do you view that as an unforgivable humiliation?" Yangxian's eyes widened. "You thought, isn't the humiliation like having one's back broken?" But Shen Lang calmly continued, "History is full of people who bent their backs. Take King Gaojun of Yu, who slept on brushwood and tasted gall, or Emperor Jing of Han, who faced pressure during the rebellion of the Seven States and even killed his trusted advisor Cao Kuo. That wasn't a humiliation. After quelling the rebellion, he was still an enlightened ruler. Did Emperor Jing of Han have an internal demon? Not at all." Hearing this, Nguyen fell silent. He valued sentiment highly, making it difficult for him to become a true hegemon, but in Shen Lang's eyes, this quality made him more human. Shen Lang continued, "Your Majesty and Zhu Hiranju will eventually confront each other, so there's no need to feel overly distressed. In his heart, he considers himself a minister of Daryan, not you country, and everything he does serves Daryan's ambition to unify the world. That's why I don't support Crown Prince Nin now. Behind him are the Zhu clan and the Hidden Arjun Association, representing Daryan's interests. If he ascends the throne, it's hard to say if you country will still be you country. Chen Lang chuckled softly. Dear Yanzhi feigns humility, staying home and pretending to be sick, not because he lacks ambition for power, but because his calculations run deeper. On the surface, he supports the crown prince, but in reality, he protects Daryan's interests. Nin Yuanxian listened intently with a serious expression. Chen Lang took a sip of tea and continued, as for the Tai clan and Chan Yao, they feign loyalty but are always looking for a chance to defect to Daryan. For example, Chan Shishi's close relationship with Prince Wu's son reveals their clear intentions. And Marquis Wu and Tai Chiat, who used to be in charge of Heshui Terrace, later went to Daryan to handle intelligence and diplomacy. This time, when the Hidden Arjun Association stole my pseudo-spirit bloodline, Heshui Terrace immediately reported it like lighting a flare. Chen Lang let out a faint laugh. Before they made their move, Wujir, a disciple of Mount Futu, came to warn me to stop my research and demanded all my results. The report quickly fell into the hands of the Hidden Arjun Association, whose alchemists used it to verify and confirm the 700 pseudo-spirit bloodlines. Poor your majesty, the Chan clan secretly flatters Daryan, and the Tai clan isn't clean either. An Nanfei has an extremely close relationship with Mount Futu, which gained the most benefits from the downfall of Jiang Lai. Their close ties with Daryan are no longer hidden. Therefore, both the crown prince and the third prince, Nin Kai, want to cling to Daryan. Whoever ascends the throne, it's difficult to say what the future holds for you country. Chen Lang looked directly at Nin Yuanxian. Only Nin Zheng is truly loyal to the country, fearing neither death nor annihilation. Hearing this, Nin Yuanxian calmed down and poured himself tea. Chen Lang continued, after overthrowing Jiang Lai, Daryan wanted to use the momentum to annex the eastern countries. However, its territory was too vast and internal affairs were in disarray, so it had to stabilize internally before focusing externally. The Emperor of Daryan implemented new policies. After more than 10 years, the centralization of power is nearly complete. Chen Lang took a sip of tea. The next step is to gradually annex the surrounding countries. To be honest, the Emperor of Daryan is indeed a rare and formidable ruler. If he were to unify the world, it wouldn't necessarily be bad. However, he prefers to suppress civilization and rule by keeping the people ignorant. It's as if he wants to force the entire world to remain at a low level. That's what makes me dislike him. Actually, I don't really care what happens to the world. I don't have time to worry about whether humanity progresses or regresses. But one thing is clear, the Emperor of Daryan dislikes me. Even though in his eyes I'm just an insignificant person, many small details reveal a very unfriendly attitude. Yuanxian asked in a low voice, then isn't your country in great danger? Chen Lang shook his head. There is danger, yes, but if Daryan wants to annex the world, the other countries won't stand idle by. Then luckiest is Wu country, because Yu country doesn't share many borders with Daryan. Furthermore, the Emperor of Daryan is already 73 years old and has reigned for over 40 years. His most pressing concern might be succession, not warfare. So, at the very least, we have 10 years to prepare. Yuanxian asked, if you see things so clearly, why still insist on resigning? Without ear, how can Nin Zheng resist? Chen Lang waved his hand. No, your majesty misunderstands. I never intended to assist anyone. I'm just used to getting into arguments and then conveniently eliminating enemies. As he said this, he felt it made perfect sense himself. From the beginning until now, he had just been playing games with words, lounged, and possession, avoiding state affairs and being lazy about military matters. Chen Lang continued, actually, Nin Zheng doesn't need many assistants. He isn't the most intelligent person, but he is the most resolute. Like water wearing a waystone, or grinding iron into a needle, slow but steady, the kind of person is truly formidable. More importantly, if I remain in the capital, the conflict between your majesty, the Zhu clan, and Daryan will become more strained, which is extremely disadvantageous. Everyone believes Nin Zheng relies on me. If I leave, in their eyes, he will be considered to have lost the battle for the throne. The crown prince and Nin Kai will no longer view him as a threat. Lately, he has become too prominent and gained too many benefits. Now he must hide his light, regain strength, and consolidate his foundation. Furthermore, I helped him compete for the throne to gain your majesty's recognition, and half of the goal has been achieved. If I leave, your majesty can clearly see his true capabilities and whether he collapses or becomes stronger. At the same time, the relationship between your majesty and the Zhu clan, Daryan, and the court officials will ease. This is crucial before a great war. Yuanxian looked at him as if asking if he truly had a compromise. Chen Lang nodded. Yes, we must compromise thoroughly, perhaps even in the most humiliating way possible. Like being exiled to please the Hidden Arjun Association, please the Crown Prince, and please the court officials. Yuanxian fell silent, knowing this guy was planning another grand scheme. We looked at Chen Lang and asked, when will you return? Chen Lang replied, probably a few months. Yuanxian thought in silence, then slowly asked, are you pessimistic about the southern campaign? Do you really think your country will lose? Chen Lang didn't answer immediately but countered with a question. Your majesty has fought against the Salmon people many times. What is your opinion of them? Nin Yuanxian said, they are more ferocious than the Jiang people. For hundreds of years, they have been fighting constantly, mostly in civil wars. Every time your country fights them, we have to use large numbers against small ones, and we use Nanu as a buffer. Our combat strength is inferior to theirs, especially in tropical forests. But continued, I have encountered many salmon warriors. King Jang Alunarner's forces included a mercenary squad full of salmon. The strongest slave fighters in the western regions also come from them. This race fights extremely fiercely but has never been unified. They are like scattered sand. He sighed. But things are different now. Kang's army wants to unify them into a single blade, supported by the Great Calamity Temple and the western regions. Even though I have over 100,000 troops in Nanur, I feel uneasy. He pointed to Shen Lang and asked, "Tell me when?" Chen Lang clasped his hands confidently. "There are many reasons for my resignation. First, to avoid becoming a target for the Empire and the Hidden Arjun Association. Second, the east tensions between your Majesty and the Zhu clan. Third, to keep Ninjang from being targeted. And there's one more important reason, to prepare forces to counter the strongest enemy." Chen Lang raised a finger. "Before I leave, I have a few suggestions." Yuanxian told him to proceed. He slowly began. "After I leave the capital looking defeated, your Majesty should elevate the status of the third prince, Nin Kai, hand over Tianbei province to him, appointing him as Grand Governor of Tianbei. At the same time, recall Tai Chait to serve as the Grand Governor of Jianshanyu." Nin Yuanxian was startled when he heard this. "If we do that, Nin Kai's influence will expand significantly. Tang Sabai, Tianbei, and Jianshanyu will all fall into his hands. Among the 5 Grand Governors, his faction would control 3. The Crown Prince's faction would only hold Tannen, and the position of Grand Governor of Jiangxi is still vacant. The temporary alliance between the Crown Prince and Nin Kai will immediately dissolve." Chen Lang chuckled faintly. "At that point, the Crown Prince's faction will have to come back and beg your Majesty. Even Zhu Huazhu will have to concede, because they absolutely must secure the position of Grand Governor of Jiangxi, and only your Majesty can appoint someone to it. At the time, Ninjang and I will become common enemies. As long as your Majesty acts distant from him, you will become the supreme referee. Some officials support Nin Kai, some follow Nin Yao, but no one supports Ninjang." Chen Lang looked directly at him. "So when I leave the capital, your Majesty should treat him coldly. Rest assured, he can endure it. Your Majesty should lavishly favor Nin Kai. At the time, the Crown Prince will be as frantic as ants on a hot pan, looking for ways to gain prestige. The Nanu battlefield is the best opportunity. Back then, your Majesty also gained renown throughout the world through victory before ascending the throne, and Crown Prince Nin now surely wants to repeat that." Hearing this, Nin Yuanxian's expression darkened. They asked, "If he loses the battle, will Nin Yao die?" "No matter what, he is still my son." Chen Lang shook his head. "Narv, the cunning Kang forces won't kill Nin Yao." Yuanxian trusted Chen Lang's confidence, but he still didn't believe the Nanu battle would necessarily be a loss. Yu country had over 130,000 troops, and all key cities were held by Julin and Nin Luo. Furthermore, in his memory, Kang Jun was still just a weak hostage who once huddled in the palace. This impression was so deeply ingrained that changing it was as difficult as pulling a tooth without anesthesia. Finally, Nin and Gairan HI letter 1 EBF and looked at TH letter 1 EA9M line, lowering his voice. "Have you thought this through carefully? If this departure doesn't turn out as you plan, the Crown Prince will be like the midday sun. Nin Chin will have no chance left to compete for the position, and you will never return to the court. Do you look straight ahead, or are you still determined to go?" TH letter 1 EA9M Lang nodded. His eyes suddenly flashed strangely. Who exactly does this person resemble? This unrestrained and rule-breaking temperament, this mind bounding like a wild horse. Familiar yet strange. After thinking for a moment, he suddenly understood. It turns out I'm a little jealous of this guy. Nin and Gairan HI letter 1 EBF and suddenly understood why he liked TH letter 1 EA9M Lang so much. Deep down, he also longed to live as freely and unrestrainedly as he did, doing whatever he wanted, destroying whoever he wished. Earth-shattering things like flattening the Hidden Source Society headquarters made one's blood run cold just hearing about them. Yet this guy dared to do it. Just thinking about it felt exhilarating. To be frank, living according to one's desires was what he had dreamed of but never dared to try. "Well, then, go ahead and do as you wish," he said. TH letter 1 EA9M Lang bowed with clasped hands. "Your Majesty, take care." Nin and Gairan HI letter 1 EBF and also wanted to reply with "take care," but the words rose to his throat only to be swallowed back down. Take care of what? This guy had always been the one harming others. No one had ever managed to harm him. The one who truly needed to be careful was clearly everyone else in the world. He simply waved his hand, said farewell, then turned and left the study to return to the royal palace. This parting would probably last a very long time before they met again. If there genuinely was a day for reunion, it meant that everything had unfolded exactly as TH letter 1 EA9M Lang calculated, with Yu Kingdom descending into chaos and a danger looming over its head. The following day, news spread throughout the capital that the monarch personally went to meet Prime Minister Zhu but was refused entry. The entire court held its breath. Had the king and the prime minister truly turned against each other? Following this, the attitudes of Great Yan and the Hidden Source Society headquarters in Yan capital became increasingly rigid. The prince even sent word that if Yu Kingdom didn't repay its debts, measures would be implemented. The threat sounded mild, but everyone understood it encompassed both politics and commerce. As soon as Great Yan gave the word, surrounding countries would immediately cut off trade. At that point, with the economy strangled and national power depleted, Yu Kingdom would be digging its own grave. The monarch remained silent. 2 days later, Duke Bi led 1 EC7 and Teru returned to the capital from the south in a rage. This man rarely lost his temper, yet as soon as he entered the monarch's study, he roared like thunder. On what grounds did th letter 1 ea9m lang kill my men? Couldn't bi letter 1 ec7 and th letter 1 ea5m have been handed over to bi letter 1 ec7 and 5 for resolution? Or does he consider me nothing? After leaving the royal palace, bi letter 1 ec7 and Teru went straight to the residence of Marquis tr letter 1 b0 letter 1 edd bin. Without a word, he pulled out his heavy black iron sword and swung a single strike, exploding the large gate into smithereens. After striking, he didn't bother to explain, turned around, and left for di letter 1 ec5 chow. Seeing his demeanor, everyone understood he had only come to the capital to vent his anger. Bi letter 1 ec7 and Teru's attitude was like the final straw that broke the camel's back. The monarch immediately issued an edict rebuking th letter 1 ea9m lang, ordering him to confine himself and reflect on his actions, and subsequently announced 3 charges against him. Uniclair chu letter 1 ea9n2 brought the imperial edict to th letter 1 ea9m lang at the Tanyu commander's residence to read aloud. The first charge, killing people arbitrarily in Tangxi province, causing suffering to the populace, and even beheading Central Commander Liang Bin, constituted high treason. The second charge, killing a staff general of the Tanyu commander's residence in Chuanwu City, was near rebellion. The third charge, ruining the reputation of the third princess Nin di letter 1 ec5m. As soon as the 3 charges were read, the monarch immediately ordered th letter 1 ea9m lang removed from the Tanyu commander's residence and sent back to the Kim clan's villa. The Black Order platform immediately deployed men to tightly surround the area, looking ready to arrest a criminal. But at that moment, Marquis Chuanwu, Timchark, presented an extremely defiant memorial to the throne. The monarch, enraged in court, pointed directly at Kimchark and accused him of intending rebellion. Not only did Kimchark not retreat, but the king also ordered the Black Order platform to increase its personnel, confining th letter 1 ea9m lang even more tightly. At the same time, Queen Alunan of Jiang Kingdom suddenly ordered the expulsion of the Yu Kingdom's envoy. Her attitude was clear: if Yu Kingdom dared to arrest th letter 1 ea9m lang, relations would immediately be severed. The monarch merely gave a cold laugh upon hearing this. In the past, Sunan used Jiang Kingdom to threaten Yu Kingdom. Now it's th letter 1 ea9m lang's turn, and he's even more formidable. The officials immediately chimed in with their agreement, the entire court nodding in unison like a chorus. Some even presented memorials arguing that since Yu Kingdom was about to go to war with Kangjun, they shouldn't provoke Jiang Kingdom. Th letter 1 ea9m lang, they claimed, was just a small figure whose pardon would not affect the overall situation. Upon hearing this, the monarch trembled with rage. Normally they keep silent, but when it's time to push someone into a hole, everyone moves as fast as the wind. Finally, he issued an edict stripping th letter 1 ea9m lang of all titles and positions, demoting him to common staters. It was even rumored that the monarch intended to act against Ninchin, but luckily bi letter 1 ec7 and Phi risked her life to intervene, saving his position. Not long after, Uniclair chu letter 1 ea9n came to the dilapidated Kim clan villa to announce an edict. Th letter 1 ea9m lang was stripped of all titles, immediately exiled from the capital, banished 2,000 li away, and would never be re-employed. We then added coldly, leave the capital immediately. Do not delay for even a moment. No one is allowed to see you off. You must not use the main gate. You must secretly leave through a small side entrance. Th letter 1 ea9m lang bowed his head and replied, OSK, understood.